Hey guys, and welcome back to Z3Cubing. Today I'm going to be checking out a handful of relatively new non-WCA puzzles, which I bought from thecubicle.com. Sometimes I like to just scroll through their list of newly released puzzles and find things that I think look interesting, and so that's how I found these four. We have two interesting new takes on the Pyraminx made by Shengshou, as well as a fun little mini cube, as well as this crazy thing, which is kind of like a complicated skewb, both made by QiYi. As always, you can get 5% off any of these puzzles, linked down in the description, or anything else at thecubicle.com with discount code Z3Cubing. So let's kick things off with, let's say, the Void Pyraminx. Now this is a Shengshou puzzle, and the fun thing about that is they actually have these really cool textured boxes. Basically on top of the printing, they've kind of indented the lines of the puzzle so that you can actually kind of feel it on the box. It's just a nice little touch to their packaging, no pun intended. And of course, as always, we have the bad translations with literally every twisted puzzle being called a magic tower and no other English on the box. Anyway, let's go ahead and get it open. We have a little instruction booklet, and then the puzzle itself is quite badly wrapped up in plastic. So, this thing looks pretty cool, doesn't it? Oh, well, that's unfortunate. I think this piece is stuck to the plastic wrap with poorly applied lube. Let me fix that real quick. As I was saying, this thing looks incredible. The novelty of a void cube, of course, is that there's a hole straight through it, so you can maybe look through it and see something on the other side, or even stick your finger through it and start turning. Of course, this is based off the idea of the original Rubiks void cube, which is just a 3x3, but without any centers. Instead, it has a hole going all the way through. I decided to put a golf ball inside of mine because why not? The thing I like about this one is just how detached everything looks when you turn it halfway. Like, it seems like this piece should barely be able to hold on to the other part of the puzzle, but sure enough, it is super solid. Except there is one big problem that you've probably spotted already. If we take a look side by side with the Pyraminx, we can see that these aren't exactly the same puzzle. There is no centerpiece on a Pyraminx to punch out to make a void version. Now I guess you could kind of enlarge these holes and get rid of the core, and this would kind of be what you'd be left with, except there's still one big problem: there are no tips. What I'm saying is that, although similar, this so-called Void Pyraminx is not simply the void version of a Pyraminx. What is it the void version of? Well, I'm glad you asked. That would be the Jing Pyraminx. This puzzle has a lot of different names and versions. This one was made by Shengshou, but I believe it was originally released by Mefferts under the name Jing Pyraminx. Essentially, it's a Pyraminx minus the tips and plus these big centerpieces. Now, I want to do a solve of the Void Pyraminx, but I think it'll make a little bit more sense if I solve the Jing Pyraminx first. And spoiler alert, it solves very similar to the Pyraminx. Alright, I think that's scrambled enough. So what we're going to do is first solve the Pyraminx part of it, so the corners and the edges, and then we can go ahead and solve the centers separately. So we have this nice little pair here. Let's go ahead and add another edge to that, and then we can go ahead and do keyhole. So we put all the red centers on the bottom like that. We can get this last edge piece in like that. And now all we have to do is finish this off with one little algorithm, just a standard Pyraminx algorithm to flip two edges. And there we go. We have the entire outside solved. And now all that's left is the centers. All you want to do is hold it so that you have two centers to swap like this. This would be incorrect. So just something like this where the two colors are the same, hold those towards you, and then on these two sides do 3 sledgehammers. It doesn't matter which directions, just something like, for example, up, up, down, down, and repeat that 3 times. And there we go. Now our Jing Pyraminx is solved. Now you might imagine, based off that description on how to solve the Jing Pyraminx, that this Void Pyraminx is going to be super easy. It's not like on a 3x3 where you base everything around the centers, and so removing them actually makes it harder. No, removing them makes it way easier in this case. By making it void, they took away the one thing that made the Jing Pyraminx unique: the centers. So in a way, I guess the Void Pyraminx is actually more like the Pyraminx than I thought. In fact, it should actually solve in the exact same way as the Pyraminx, just minus the tips. So let's go ahead and try it. We have one pair right here. Let's go ahead and maybe add this edge piece on like that. And then we can go ahead and do keyhole with red on the bottom like that. We can go ahead and get this edge piece into there. As you can tell, this puzzle turned a little bit rough, just like the original Void puzzle, but that's to be expected because of the mechanism. And then we can go ahead and finish it off with the same case that we got last time. Just like that, and then like this. And as you can see, there's no centers to deal with, so there we go. It's solved exactly like a Pyraminx. So yeah, that's the Shengshou Void Pyraminx. It's funny to think that they took a puzzle that adds centers to a Pyraminx, and then they got rid of the centers. So I guess it is sort of like a Pyraminx, but in a very twisted way. So yeah, very solid puzzle. The turning's not the greatest, but for $9, I think it's a very fun novelty that I would definitely recommend. Alright, on to the Mirror Pyraminx. This is another puzzle released by Shengshou around the same time as the Void Pyraminx, so we have the same nice textured packaging and same magic tower on the box. Same Chinese instructions, same not very effective plastic wrap, but a different puzzle on the inside, albeit with a pretty similar idea to the last one. Now just by looking at it, I can already tell that this puzzle is going to turn better than the last one. We definitely have more rounded corners and of course no hole through the middle. So let's try it out, and yeah, that definitely turns a lot better. It also just looks very cool. Like, you can see the reflection of everything. There I am waving from off camera, and there is the next puzzle I'm about to talk about. This is, of course, the original 3x3 mirror cube based off a 3x3, the same puzzle on the inside. Basically, the idea is, instead of having a different color to differentiate each side, we instead have a different layer height. And of course, every single piece has to match that layer height in order for the puzzle to be a perfect cube. So the solved position is the only cubic position, and of course, because there's no colors, you might as well add a fun mirror finish to all the sides to make things even more confusing. So that's what the mirror Pyraminx is, except with the Jing Pyraminx instead of a 3x3. We've taken away all the colors and just added different heights to differentiate all four sides. So in theory, this should solve the exact same way as the Jing Pyraminx, but in practice, for anybody who has ever solved a mirror cube, you'll know that it is a little bit more tricky than that. Alright, I think that's pretty well scrambled. So my general strategy to solve a mirror cube is basically the same thing as solving the normal puzzle, except with a bit more trial and error to figure out which piece fits in where. It looks like we already got lucky and got one piece in. So now we need a fairly skinny and a somewhat larger piece to fit in there. So how about that one? Nope, not quite. What if we put it in backwards? And yep, it fits. Now if we take a look at our top corner here compared to this bottom one, it looks like we already have these heights matched up perfectly, which should mean that this one is oriented correctly, and this is the correct height to be on the bottom if we're doing keyhole. That's a little bit confusing, but that's kind of the way you have to think when it comes to mirror cubes. And so now we have matched that correct height with this other corner, and then we can move on to the last corner and turn it until that height looks correct, just like that. There we go. Now all three of these bottom corners are correct relative to each other. We just have to find the piece that goes into there with a bit of trial and error maybe. That one's not it. That one is not it. How about this one? Okay, that one's correct. So we can go ahead and do our quick little algorithm thing like this to get that in the right spot. And there we go. Now we have all three of these corners, and we can go ahead and line that up with the bottom corners. And then taking a look at our last three edges, it looks like this one is flat and the other two are not, which I think means that we have a case where we have to move one of these edges to the side. Yep. And then this one up, this one down, and this one down. And there we go. We have now finished the outer Pyraminx part. So the trick is we have to find the two sets of centerpieces we could swap to solve the entire cube. It's very obvious when there's just colors, but with heights, I'm not really sure how to figure it out. Obviously, swapping these two isn't going to work because they're both too small. Maybe swapping these two will work. Let's try it. So we do 1, 2, and then 3 sledgehammers. And it looks like we just made everything worse. Perfect. Okay, so swapping these two didn't work. So let's try swapping these two instead. So we'll do 3 sledgehammers here. And hopefully, this should get us back to a solved position. And there we go. And our mirror Pyraminx is finally solved. That was a little bit tricky, I'll admit. That last step especially, I wasn't exactly sure how to figure that out. It really takes a good understanding of what you're doing to the pieces in order to solve any mirror puzzle. So yeah, this was a good test of how well I know my Pyraminx. And actually, now that I look at it, there's lines in the pieces, and these lines in the centers are not lined up, so maybe I don't quite know what I'm doing. Alright, I just did about 1 million sledgehammers and nothing happened. So let me know if you know how to twist centers on a Jing Pyraminx. I would be interested. Not something I've ever really thought about before. So yeah, if you like mirror cubes or Pyraminxes, or really if you just like fun, not too hard non-WCA puzzles, then I could definitely recommend the Shengshou mirror Pyraminx. I thought it was pretty fun. Now it's time to move on to the second half of this unboxing with 2 new cubes from QiYi. Now before we get to perhaps the most interesting cube in this entire video, let's start with something a little bit more fun and trivial. This is a keychain gear cube. It looks like just about the only word of English on the box is the word speed cube. Oh no, it also says more than a professional speed cube. Which one is it? More than a speed cube or just a speed cube? Anyway, I guess the idea is that people who like keychains with Rubiks cubes also like keychains with weird looking creatures holding a Rubiks cube, I guess. So we get an extra little keychain here. That's useful. Anyway, on to the main attraction. Now I actually do have a small collection of keychain cubes already. I of course have this epic little magnetic one. I have this 2x2, which I took the mechanism out of to make a Lego cube. And most interestingly, I have a Pyraminx and a Skube. I'll actually link to these in the description too. They're actually some pretty cool little mini puzzles. Anyway, that's not what this video is about. This is a mini keychain gear cube. Not exactly the first puzzle to come to mind when you're thinking of keychain cubes, but you gotta admit, it's also a pretty good idea. The gear cube is a kind of puzzle that's super fun and unique, but it's also just a little bit too easy. You're probably not just gonna leave one out on your desk and solve it all the time. But if you put it on your keychain, I mean, then you can solve it all the time. Personally, I don't carry any cubes on a keychain, but if I did, it would definitely be either a 3x3 or this one. Another big plus side to this is it feels super sturdy, especially compared to these Pyraminx and Skewb, which feel quite flimsy. I have no doubt that even if it were scrambled like this, it would withstand, well, being on a keychain. Of course, this is based off the QiYi Gear Cube, which looks just like this, exactly a bigger version of this one. You may also be familiar with the Mefferts Gear Cube. This is the original, but it turns out that these are actually slightly different puzzles. As you can see, the orientation of the teeth on the edge pieces are a little bit different, and actually the number of teeth on the corner pieces is different, which makes things a little bit different. Basically, the one major unique thing about this version is that you can get a special little parity case where a bunch of edge pieces are flipped that you couldn't get on the original. So they have actually innovated a little bit with their Gear Cube. Anyway, let's go ahead and solve this little one and see what it's like. So first, let's match up some corner pieces. So maybe this white and green one with this other white and green one, and then get the other white ones. And there we go. Now we have all the corner pieces. And now we just sort of have to mess around with things for a bit to figure out the edges. So there we go. Let's get that white one in there. White one there. There we go. Now everything's in the right spot. And we just have to turn a bunch of sides a bunch of times in order to get the edge pieces aligned. Like that. Okay, those ones are backwards. That's fine. And then like that. Those ones are also backwards. So this set is correct. These other two sets are flipped. So this is the little parity I was talking about. We just have to do a little move like this, and that should solve it. There we go. So here is our solved Gear Cube. That's a lot of fun. I would probably get rid of the keychain. I think it got in the way more than it helped, but other than that, I mean, yeah, it's a Gear Cube in a more convenient form factor. If you don't already have a Gear Cube, well, then you should get one. I guess I'd recommend the normal sized one first, but if you already have one of these and you like it, then go ahead and get the smaller one too. I think it's a really fun novelty to have both. And by the way, the turning on this one isn't quite as good as the bigger one, but that's kind of hard to beat because the turning on this one is amazing. Also, just like the bigger one, it has these nice built-in tiles that kind of look like stickers, but are actually a lot nicer and more durable. Anyway, let's finally move on to the fourth and final puzzle. This is called the QiYi Super Ivy Cube. Again, it says Speed Cube, but also more than a professional speed cube. And let's get the box open, little instruction booklet, as well as the puzzle itself. Again, I don't think we'll be needing this, although if you open them all the way up, I guess they are pretty helpful and they do have English on the other side, so that's kind of nice. Anyway, just taking a glance around the outside, it has a very unique look to it. We have some much brighter shades than on most QiYi puzzles, but also we have these built-in tiles with black outlines, just like on the Gear Cubes I was talking about. But the interesting thing is, we only have them on these 5 inner pieces, not on these outer sort of edge pieces. These ones just look like pure stickerless pieces, whereas these ones look like stickered pieces, which makes for a very interesting hybrid sort of look, because there's no black lines along the edges like you'd get on any normal stickered cube. Anyway, this is based off a puzzle called the Ivy Cube, also made by QiYi. You can see the resemblance. It's just as if you had basically doubled the possible turns on an Ivy Cube. So you take this shape and sort of double it on the other axis, and that means in addition to turning like this, it can also turn on this other axis like this. So let's try it out. We could just turn like half of the corners, and that would basically turn it into an Ivy Cube, like this. Or we could start turning the other corners, and that just makes everything a little bit more complicated. And I can already say, out of all the new puzzles I've tried in this video, this one definitely turns the best. QiYi is definitely doing better things than Shengshou when it comes to turning. Not only do we have actual corner cutting and just a general smooth and fluid and fast feeling to the turns, but we also have a nice clicking mechanism. It feels like ball bearings, but yeah, every time you turn a side, it snaps nicely into place and gives you a great sense of when you have finished each turn. Another fun comparison to make is to the Skewb, the classic corner turning cube. As you can see, the centerpieces on these two puzzles are obviously going to act the same as you turn the different sides, but this one also has edges on it that of course aren't present on the Skewb, and it's almost as if these corners have sort of been split up into 3 different pieces, so that only 2 out of the 3 parts of the corners move with each turn. Essentially the difference is that there's multiple layers, whereas on a Skewb, there's only 1 layer on each axis. Okay, maybe it's not as much like a Skewb as I thought. Anyway, the knowledgeable among you probably recognize this at first sight as a Rex Cube. It's actually a design that's been around for quite a long time. I guess it's called that because it's kind of like a deeper cut version of the Dino Cube with kind of these overlapping cuts with more pieces on the inside. Now, this is the first puzzle in this video that I don't immediately know how to solve because I've never owned a Rex Cube, so I guess I better give it a try. Looks like we have a bunch of orange pieces here. Can we maybe get one more orange piece? Kind of like that. And then the last one like that. Okay, now how do we get these edge pieces? I guess maybe we have to kind of pair them with these pieces before we move them in. So I think we need the yellow one here. Okay, I think I'm figuring this out. Maybe this will be correct. There we go. Those 2 are together. And now those ones are correct. I think I messed up one in the process, but I think we've made progress overall. Now I have to get these last two, which will probably be pretty tricky. Okay, so I'm sort of starting to be able to wrap my mind around moving these pieces around. So I want to get this piece up to here. So I need to move it into this position like this. That way I can move this out of the way like that, and then move this into position, and then move those back. Now I just have to figure out this last edge piece. Okay, now I got all the edge pieces in, but I can't figure out how to also get this piece in. My thought is, what if I maybe move this out of the way like an ivy cube, and then maybe I can attach the orange piece in from here. Oh, here we go. Orange piece is attached, and now we can move it back in. And there we go. I feel like I'm totally overthinking this. What if we try a different strategy and maybe just try and solve all the edges first? Okay, that was easy. That was just like a dino cube. There we go. Now we can finish up the last remaining centers, just like a scube. So we want to do this and then just a couple of sledgehammers like this. Okay, so it turns out that messes up the edges. So I guess I'm going to have to play around a little bit until I figure something out. Oh. Not sure how I did that, but that worked. Okay, now I got everything except these little inner pieces. Now what I have to figure out is how to just move the inner pieces individually, which sounds like a pain. And honestly, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to figure that out by the end of the video. Unless I cheat. Just kidding. Let's end the video. Anyway, that concludes this miscellaneous little unboxing. If you like Pyraminxes, then well, here are two good options for you. I think this one is probably my favorite just because of the novelty of sticking your fingers through it and stuff. It's also the easiest of all these puzzles. At least if you already know how to solve a Pyraminx, the gear cube is also pretty easy. This one's a little bit more challenging than all of those, and obviously this one is the most challenging, unless I'm just really stupid. I definitely enjoyed the mirror cube and the gear cube too, but I think my personal favorite of this video is this one just because it is pretty difficult and a lot of fun. Even just getting this far, I really enjoyed it, and I hope to learn how to solve it soon. It also is definitely the best turning cube in this video. Also, I guess I forgot to mention, the two Pyraminxes are each $9, the mini gear cube is just $6, and the QiYi Super Ivy Cube is $14. Make sure and check out the links in the description to where you can get each one at thecubicle.com, and once again, you can get 5% off anything from their store with discount code Z3Cubing. Anyway, yeah, I thought this was a fun little unboxing, and I hope you guys enjoyed too. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys next time.